Ostrichsized, Finding Heaven in the Midst of Shell by Kevin Becker, Chapter 4. You are the way you are because that is the way you want to be. Fred Smith. Proverbs 23:7. For as he thinks within himself, so is he. The bridge to nowhere. The bridge. Here is my version of a classic story about a man and a bridge. After years of living in the blind spot, as the story goes, a man figures out his purpose and begins to walk across a bridge headed towards his destiny. Nothing will stop him. He knows who he is and where he is going. He gets halfway across the bridge and he sees a man holding a rope. The man hands him an end and proceeds to jump off the bridge while holding on to the other end. The traveler gets yanked to the side railing and looks down at the gentleman dangling high above the jagged rocks. "What are you doing?" he yells. "Just hold on and don't let go," comes the reply. The traveler is confused. Why in the world did the stranger hand him the rope and then jump off the bridge? After all, he's on an important journey. "Are you crazy? Why did you jump?" he shouted down. "I'm your responsibility. Whatever you do, don't let go," he said. The sojourner tried and tried to pull him up to safety, but he simply didn't have enough leverage or strength. For quite some time, the traveler tried to reason with the man dangling off of the bridge. "Come on, we can do this. We can get you back up here to safety. You climb up and I will pull. Together we can make it happen." "No!" shouted the dangling stranger. "You must hold me. My life is in your hands. Save me, please." After some time, the traveler gave his final response. "You are not my responsibility. I have tried to pull you up, but I cannot. If we work together, you will be saved. I have enough strength for one more attempt. Will you try to climb as I pull? Whatever you do, don't let go. You must hold me here. I'll die if you let go. I'm your responsibility," was his reply. With that, the traveler let go of the rope and continued on his way. Direction. I love that story, and no, I'm not twisted. What does it mean? Where do you see yourself in the story? What role have you played? What role are you currently playing? What did you think of the traveler's response? Before you continue reading, please reread those questions and answer them again. They're very important questions. Where do you see yourself in this story? What role have you played? What role are you currently playing? And what do you think of the traveler's response? I have waffled back and forth between feeling trapped while carrying others' burdens to manipulating others into doing what I want. Currently, I don't hold either end of the rope, but for years and years, I was stuck on the bridge to nowhere. As tasteless as it sounds, the release of his unwelcome burden is actually a healthy response. All through life, people will hand you ropes. There are many people that will pull you in the direction they want you to go. As mentioned earlier, many will be sincere and well-meaning. Some might actually be right. However, if you give your power away and allow others to control and manipulate you, you will be setting yourself up for disaster. I mean, how long can you hold another person's rope anyway? Many times, the bruises, bumps, and blisters we encounter in life are perceived as self-inflicted. Our adversary, the father of lies, subtly impregnates us with deception, and we believe the lies and they become our identity. John 8:44. We spend much of our vital energy fighting the wrong fight, holding the wrong rope and living a life that weighs us down. When we do, a cancerous anger grows inside of us. Many are unaware of its existence. For some, it leads to depression, others, rage. Where are you headed? If you don't know, people will gladly tell you where to go and hand you their rope. Earl Nightingale tells the fictitious story about a man named Charlie. In my opinion, Charlie represents 83% of humanity. In this parable, Charlie starts out as a young boy. He goes to school and does as other boys do. He seeks to be just like them. He continues copying others until a friend asks him what he wants to do with the rest of his life. He isn't sure, so his buddy encourages him to get a job at the factory. He does, and when he gets to work, he begins imitating how all the others do their job. After work, he comes home to his escape box and watches TV for the evening like everyone else. This goes on for 40 plus years. He watches others live their lives and pursue their goals while doing nothing to accomplish his own. Does this story sound familiar? Does it alarm you? Is that all there is to living? Where does Charlie go wrong? In a word, nearsightedness. He focused on the things that were closest to his view. He became a copycat. One of the most underappreciated problems our society faces is people not knowing who they are. The majority of people don't know what they want because they don't know who they are. We have the war on drugs, cops fighting gang violence, anti-war protesters, educational initiatives to learn math and science, agencies against human trafficking, and marches against abortion. But what about inspiring others to be themselves? Ever heard of the Coalition Against Copycatting? Why can it be so hard to live our life? Why is it so challenging to bring the inner person out? I recently heard a story about a lady who had some of her kids taken away. Why? Because her kid's sperm donor, aka dad, was molesting them. When asked why this happened, the mother said she never saw her high school sweetheart as an abuser. Once again, we have the concept of vision. This lady was so focused on pleasing her man that she let her kids get molested. I can't think of anything more disgusting in life than allowing a perp to ostracize his own girls. Yet it happens over and over again. Years ago, I met someone who was molested by her uncle and family friends. When she told her parents, they didn't believe her and said she was making it up. Her parents didn't see the potential her uncle had to wreak havoc to this precious little girl. And thus, they didn't see her heart get destroyed either. Even after multiple failed marriages, attempted suicide, and heavy drug abuse, her parents never reached out to her and said they were sorry. No one cherished her heart. They never reconciled before she died. Tragic, absolutely tragic. This story is repeated over and over throughout our society. And how are we taught to deal with it? Be quiet. Ignore it. Don't rock the boat. Don't acknowledge it. Snitches get stitches. The result, hearts are severed and the cycle of pain repeats itself in future generations. Things are not as they appear. One of the reasons Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Matrix, Avatar, Star Wars, and The Wizard of Oz were so popular was the idea that there is something going on behind the scene. We often wonder if there is a God. Life on other planets, UFOs, who's in control? Are things as they appear? Do we have secret powers? Is there a great wizard behind the curtain? It's easy for humans to see what they want to see. As children, our parents are our idols. We want to be just like our dad and love our mom. That is why kids who live in abusive homes scream and cry when CPS takes them away from their family. To them, their family's perfect. They can't see the blind spots. But as we grow older, we start to see that our families aren't perfect. We aren't perfect. Our eyes are open and we start having questions. Why did my dad abandon me? Why was I adopted? What's behind my parents' smiles? Why does dad stay at work and not come to my games? Why do the creditors call my house? Who sent that text to my mom? Why does dad yell at mom? Why do my parents watch TV in separate rooms? Why don't we eat dinner together? Does dad always have to stay late at work? What's he doing anyway? What happens on the business trips? Who's mom talking to on Facebook? Now let's get more personal. How about you? What do you see? Are things really what they appear to be? Are you finding what you want to find? Focusing on what you want to? If your vision is blurred, how do you change? Do you respect your parents? Do you respect yourself? What are you focused on? Are you in love or just blindly infatuated? Do you love your heart? Are you able to tap into the deep pain, or have you blocked it out? How's your vision? Nearsightedness. When I was in 6th or 7th grade, my friends and I were playing pole tag after school. The basic idea of pole tag is running from one awning support beam to the next without getting tagged. The poles were all base, but only one person at a time could be on a pole. There was about 9 poles supporting the drive-through and the covered walkway. My friends and I loved dashing amongst them. We were having a grand old time chasing each other when I saw my younger sister running full steam ahead, looking behind her at the person who was it. At the moment, she was nearsighted. She was focusing on her immediate threat instead of on her way out. Had she been looking towards her future, she wouldn't have crashed into the support beam, chipped her tooth, and received a huge knot on her forehead. Ouch! As Seneca once said, don't stumble over things behind you. Nearsightedness is a disease that affects almost every human being. We focus on our immediate threat, whatever is right in front of us. Why do so many people eat hamburgers? Because their immediate threat is hunger, and there are burger joints on every street corner. Why do so many people watch horrible TV programs? Because we have 3 television sets per home. French fries, TV, high fructose corn syrup, and soda are always within sight. I would bet there are more TVs per home than people residing in them. How messed up is that? Hollywood is successful because it puts its message near to our sight, with vending machines everywhere. Is it any wonder that people snack on soda and candy bars? What do you allow in your vision? Reality is, if you only focus on the thing that is near, you'll end up smacking your head. Idolatry. Psalms 115 verses 4 through 8 is very interesting. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of man's hands. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They have noses, but they cannot smell. They have hands, but they cannot feel. They have feet, but they cannot walk. They cannot make a sound with their throat. And I love this line. Those who make them will become like them. Everyone who trusts in them. What is idolatry? How does idolatry relate to vision and nearsightedness? Does exploring our idols give us a clue as to who we are, what we want, and how we would spend $250 million? Idolatry, plain and simple, is anything you worship more than God. Worship is simply ascribing worth or value to something you honor. When the pain of life squeezes in, where do people turn? Where do you turn? The other day I saw a person get hurt, and the first thing out of their mouth was, and this is my PG version, "Holy crap!" It dawned on me, when the pain becomes overbearing, where do most people turn? To their crap. Our society has so idolized our poo that we proudly proclaim our toilets as the throne. Why do we make our crap holy? This lady didn't say, "Praise Jesus," or "Oh, doctor," or "Buddha, help," or "Help me, medicine." She just simply opened her mouth and let what was in flow out. As Matthew 12:34 so eloquently states, "For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart." Whether it is depression, anger, hopelessness, grief, sorrow, bitterness, pain, work, TV, porn, food, sports, or our past, what we focus on the most, we are ascribing value and worth to. These become our gods. They become what we turn to and turn into. Our brokenness becomes our idols. When we worship our past dysfunction more than the restorative, creative, powerful healer, we limit God's ability to transform us into His image. And the result? We take His name in vain. By beholding, we become changed. In short, we become the idols we worship. People who turn to their food gain weight. People who play video games and watch TV are nervous, twitchy, and shallow. Those addicted to pain meds become spaced out zombies. I met a man who is in severe pain. One of his many issues was carpal tunnel. I've seen 2 people miraculously cured of this, so my faith was high. I asked if I could pray, and all he kept talking about was how much pain he was in. The pain in his back, hands, arms, and knees was his constant focus. I could not get him to slow down enough to really pray for him. He had so elevated his pain that it literally had become an idol for him. Needless to say, I left and he was still hurting. It broke my heart. More on healing prayer later. What are the effects of idolatry? In a prophetic parable, God speaks to His people through Ezekiel and tells them they are committing adultery against Him by turning to their neighbors, Egypt and Assyria. He calls their dualistic living idolatry. Notice how the effects of this idolatry are disastrous to ostrich-sized offspring. Chapter 23, verse 37. For they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. Thus they have committed adultery with their idols, and even caused their sons, whom they bore to me, to pass through the fire to them as food. Verse 39, for when they had slaughtered their children for their idols, they entered my sanctuary on the same day to profane it. And lo, thus they did within my house. Did you catch this? When the parental generation settles for a lesser lover, kids pay the price. We would never think of throwing our children in a volcano or killing them during a dark ritual on Friday the 13th. But what happens when alcoholics spend the family income at the spirit store? What happens when a mom is overextended, working too many hours a week? When the game is more important than the family, who suffers? Children. As Americans, we are busy. Life keeps us on the go, and relationship with God gets sacrificed on the altar of denial. By failing to place God above ropes that ensnare, our offspring end up stuck in sacrificial shells of emotional anorexia. Codependency. The modern buzzword for ostrich-sized, nearsightedness, and idolatry is codependency. Codependency is nothing more than placing our idols, the things that press in closest to our view, in front of God's ability to set us free. We become more dependent upon what other people think of us than upon who God says we are. I see codependent behavior rob dreams, break marriages, destroy families, and eventually kill people. It almost took me out. Do we want to live dependent upon alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, porn, other people's expectations, idols, or busyness? No. But until we can let go of the idolatrous ropes of nearsighted dysfunction, we will continue to be stuck on the bridge to nowhere. Most of us have some level of awareness that idols and codependency destroy us. We walk around self-conscious of our inabilities, but paralyzed to be transformed by His grace. We focus on all of our negatives, and it blinds us to our potential. We just don't know what to do or where to go to find help. Now keep in mind, an ostrich-sized person is one whose potential is buried beneath their pain. Are you living in the midst of your pain? Are you running from your pain? Have you reached your maximum potential? What is limiting you? What is holding you back? Has the idol of pain become your identity? Do you feel incapable of breaking free? Suffer. The Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God, and if children, heirs also. Heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ. If indeed we suffer with Him, so that we may also be glorified with Him. That's Romans 8:16 and 17. One of the predominant meanings of the word suffer is to feel strong emotion. When we stuff and tune out and ignore, we miss out on sonship. We sacrifice ourselves in the shell of pain and become emotional anorexics. There is power in feeling. As Wally has said, one day I realized that sadness is just another word for not enough coffee. What are the effects of living with buried pain? Coffee and prescription meds. Most humans live so unaware of how they feel. We take drugs to wake up in the morning, drugs to go to sleep at night. We eat before we're hungry, and we stop after we're full. We bury the hurt behind a beer and deal with anxiety by puffing on a cigarette. When we feel empty inside, we stimulate the endorphins with sugar and chocolate and pig out until we pop. The word pharmacy or pharmacology comes from the Greek word pharmakos. Do you know how the Bible translates it? Sorcerer. The understanding behind it is a drug that is used by people living in their illusion. It's called magic or a poison. We are one of the most drugged, numbed, and clueless societies I believe the planet has ever seen. The result? We don't suffer. We don't feel. We are oblivious. We buy into the lie of illusion. I'm sure the devil is thrilled by our dependence on medication. Isn't it easier to give a 9-year-old boy Ritalin than to take him outside for a run? In the great battle between educators and the gaming consoles, Big Pharma wins. And no, I'm not saying all medication is from the devil. Yes, I take meds when needed. I'm thankful modern science has created medicines and vaccines that have increased the quality and the quantity of life. I celebrate what medicine has done. We're just trying to look at the big picture from another perspective. Why do we run from our emotions? Why have we become an anesthetized society? Why do we ignore and run from the very things that will set us free? It is our desire to not suffer that causes the most suffering. Let me say that again. It is the desire to not suffer that causes the most suffering. Dis-ease. Common sense, as well as a quick internet search, will reveal that stress is a major factor in most illness. Some guess stress plays a factor in as high as 99% of cases, and there's others that doubt stress has anything to do with illness. Some believe stress to be linked with everything from heart disease and obesity to depression and headaches. Grinding teeth, ulcers, abdominal pain, reduced sex drive, fibromyalgia, and insomnia have all been linked to stress. Intrinsically, we know that a person who lives under constant stress will not function nearly as well as a person who is peaceful and happy. I recently asked a doctor if he thought stress and emotional problems played a factor in physical disease. He replied with an emphatic yes. The overwhelming majority of physical disease comes from emotional stress. When I mentioned the 99% stat to another doctor friend, he stated, "Yep, makes perfect sense to me." I'm not trying to prove to you that stress kills. Right now, I'm inviting you to use common sense. Ponder. What does stress do to you? Are you aware you are under stress? How does it affect your body? When I assess my body for stress and intentionally relax, many times my shoulders drop 2 inches. I keep stress in my shoulders and neck unless I focus on releasing the stressor. Try it right now. Check from your head to your toes and see if you are aware of any tension. As I typed this, I rescanned and noticed I was holding my breath, taking shallow breaths, and my shoulders were tight. Let's analyze this and take a look at stress. And again, let me remind you that pain and stress occur when the head and the heart aren't aligned. Imagine driving a car down the interstate at 70 miles an hour with the 2 front wheels 20 degrees out of alignment. If the front wheel's head were heading in a different direction than the back wheel's heart, what would happen? It wouldn't be pretty. It would produce a lot of stress on the entire car. The tires would overheat and begin to melt, triggering a chain reaction of destruction. Another example, an acquaintance owns a $70,000 violin. Do you think that she puts heavy books on the strings? Does she leave it out in the snow? No, of course not. She understands that placing stress on her instrument would cause it to degenerate rapidly. So, what is the opposite of being at ease? Dis-ease. Could it be that the birthplace of most physical disease and sickness is not having peace and ease? Again, I understand there's issues that don't fall into this category. We're just trying to look at the big picture. We began this journey together asking about your heart. Is it any wonder that the leading cause of death, both worldwide and in the United States of America, is a broken heart, aka heart disease? What is the relationship between stress and a broken heart? Do you feel more stressed when your heart and emotions know something is out of balance? How is your heart? Is it broken, hurt, or oppressed? Without a doubt, the stereotype of Western medicine is that doctors treat illness with medication instead of looking at the root emotional underlying heart problem. If you have cancer, they give you chemo and radiation. If you have high cholesterol, they put you on a medicine to bring it down. If you are obese, they give you an appetite suppressant or cut out part of your stomach. Have you read the reports of the doctors who administer chemo to patients who don't even have cancer just to make a buck? I have. The medical profession is quick to administer medications. I respect doctors, and I think most of them do an amazing job. There are lots of doctors that heal folks and not just mask symptoms. There are medicines that save lives. I'm not intending to throw the medical profession under the bus. I just want to challenge us to think, how did we end up in the doctor's office in the first place? A doctor friend of mine said he had read a study that stated that if a provider listens to a patient for 10 minutes, it has similar effects as giving them a dose of an anti-anxiety medication. When was the last time you had an MD sit down and ask you about your heart, emotions, and feelings, and what you think is really going on below the surface? When was the last time a doctor prayed for you? I'm sure some of them do, but I've never experienced it before. I saw a patient who is in chronic pain, body stressed to the max, and on lots of medications that weren't working, totally relax and receive a measure of healing just after talking to her for 2 hours. She had tried most pain meds, depression meds, skin creams, etc., but hadn't received any relief. How many doctors sit down and listen for 2 hours? They don't have that kind of time. But a quick refill will take away the symptoms. Just beware the side effects aren't worse than the disease itself. I've been into homes where patients are taking 30 plus medications at a time. That's crazy. Do you think there's something going on under the surface? Why do you have high blood pressure? Maybe you aren't exercising or eating the best diet. Why are you eating junk food and being lazy? Maybe because poor nutrition and TV are always within sight. Why do TV and junk food fuel you? Maybe because you don't love yourself enough to care for your body. Why don't you love yourself? Maybe you don't know who you are. Why don't you know who you are? Maybe you don't suffer, feel, and stay tuned in with your emotions. Why don't you suffer? Maybe you take a pill to deal with the symptoms instead of look at the underlying issue. Why do you pop a pill? Maybe because your God wears a white lab coat and the quick fix sounds easier than valuing your body through exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. What's the bottom line? Maybe you have been ostrachized because you've buried your potential beneath your pain. Why are you ostrachized? Maybe because your adversary, the devil, is kicking your butt and you barely have enough strength to get by, let alone seek wholeness and healing from the great deliverer. I am convinced that the root problem in today's society, waistline, and workforce boils down to not knowing who we are and loving that person. The result of not understanding our worth and value and the stress associated with that is dis-ease. Where does COPD and ulcers come from? Could it be from being ostracized? Where does cirrhosis of the liver come from? Could it be from being ostracized? Where does obesity come from? Could it be from being ostracized? Maybe it's time we form our own coalition against copycatting. Maybe it's time to dig through the layers of disease and dysfunction and understand who we really are. Maybe it is time to release the pain of our past and pursue the calling of our passion. Maybe it is time to look at our stress-ravaged immune systems and figure out how to build them back up. But where does all of that begin? Is that something we can do on our own? Do we have power to change? Can disease be healed instead of masked? What does that process really look like? Can a person be recreated? Is there any good news? Many folks feel like the path they are stuck on is a bridge leading them to nowhere. They feel trapped, abandoned, isolated, vulnerable, and helpless. But as we pull back the idolatrous layers and get a new lens to view our past through, we discover good news. And the good news is that the bridge is actually an opportunity to understand who you are and where you are going. It is a bridge of freedom. On this bridge, your heart comes alive and begins to help you know where your adventure awaits. It truly is a bridge to know where. Are you sick? Do you feel sick? Do you have ulcers, Crohn's, IBS, inflammation, headaches, or hypertension? Are you drinking, smoking, or overeating? What do you do when you notice the symptoms of sickness? What do you hold on to and what do you release? Do you know how or why you got sick? Can you trace the origin? Do you have power to release the disease? While most of us are good at seeing the speck in others, few can diagnose the plank in our own eye. Many of us are detained in our blind spot. For some, the bridge leads to nowhere. For others, the feeling of being trapped leads to a passionate pursuit of potential. Do you know where your heart is? When I was trapped on the bridge, God allowed me to enter a deep, dark cave. Study guide to chapter 4. What idols have you become like? How are you nearsighted? The old saying, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. Who do you hang around and what are they like? Do you have any disease in your life? And if so, can you trace its origin? Step 1, identify your shell. Step 2, identify what you're running from. Step 3, identify who you are. Step 4, identify your idols.